Imagine planning the happiest day of your life, only to have it nearly destroyed by a sinister plot from within your closest circle. The emotional toll of this experience was immense, pushing me to my breaking point. Get ready for a raw, unfiltered look at how jealousy can poison even the strongest bonds, and how I fought to save my wedding from the brink. It began, as most of my life as significant stories did, with Maya. Long before it was a dream of a white dress and a man waiting for me at the end of an aisle, it was a dream we built together. We were 12, cross-legged on my floral bedspread, a contraband copy of a bridal magazine stolen from her older sister's room spread between us. Her finger, nail-bitten and unpolished, traced the outline of a princess gown. This one, Chloe, she declared with the absolute certainty only a preteen can possess. You'd look like a literal queen. I'd agreed, of course, because in the universe that was our friendship, her word was gospel. Maya wasn't just a friend. She was a fixture, an extension of my own identity. We were Chloe and Maya, a single entity that navigated the treacherous hallways of middle school, the melodramatic minefields of high school, and the bewildering freedom of college. She was the one I called when I got my first A on a college paper. She was the one who held my hair back after my first disastrous encounter with cheap tequila. She knew the secret, embarrassing crush I'd harbored on our high school history teacher. And I knew she still slept with the worn-out teddy bear she'd had since she was 3. Our lives were a tapestry, woven with shared secrets, inside jokes, and an unshakable belief that we would be in each other's lives forever. She was the sister I chose, the platonic love of my life. And then came Michael. He entered my life not like a thunderclap, but like a slow, warming sunrise. He was a landscape architect I'd met through a mutual work colleague, a man with kind eyes and a laugh that felt like coming home. Our love story wasn't a whirlwind romance. It was a quiet, steady build. It was comfortable, easy, and profoundly deep. He saw me in a way I hadn't realized I wanted to be seen. He didn't just listen to my dreams. He asked for the blueprints. When he proposed, it was on our 3rd anniversary. He took me to the botanical gardens, the same one where we had our second date, the one I rambled on and on about, describing my fantasy of a wedding under its magnificent glass-domed conservatory. Under the soft glow of fairy lights, he had somehow arranged to be turned on just for us. He knelt on one knee. It wasn't a surprise we had talked about our future for months, but the reality of it, the weight of the beautiful vintage-inspired ring in its velvet box, the earnest love in his eyes, it stole the air from my lungs. My yes was a choked, tearful whisper. And after the breathless kisses and the giddy laughter, after I'd called my parents, my fingers, still trembling, dialed Maya's number. Her shriek was everything I had hoped for. Oh my God, it happened! He finally did it. Show me the ring! FaceTime me right now! Her face, pixelated on my screen, was a mask of pure, unadulterated joy. Her eyes, wide and sparkling, mirrored the diamond on my finger. "We have to start planning immediately," she squealed. "This is it, Chloe! This is what we have been talking about since we were kids. Maid of honor, reporting for duty." In that moment, my happiness was complete. The 2 great loves of my life, Michael and Maya, were the twin pillars of my perfect world. The search for the perfect wedding dress should have been a sacred ritual, a highlight reel moment of pure joy. Instead, It became the first chapter in a story of slowly dawning horror. I assembled my trusted crew, my mom, my older sister Sarah, and of course, Maya. The first boutique was a blur of satin and tulle. I tried on a ball gown that made me look like a cupcake, a slinky sheath dress that was far too revealing, and a beaded monstrosity that weighed more than a small child. Through it all, Maya was a fountain of witty, if slightly biting, commentary. "That one makes your shoulders look broad," she would say of one. "The waistline on that is just wrong," she would declare of another. My mom and sister offered gentle, constructive feedback, but Maya's critiques were sharp, delivered with the finality of a judge's gavel. I told myself she was just being honest, saving me from a future of cringeworthy wedding photos. Then, at the third boutique, it happened. I stepped into a dress that felt less like a garment and more like a second skin. It was the dress from my daydreams A-line, with an overlay of the most exquisite chantilly lace and delicate illusion sleeves. As the consultant clipped me in and I turned to face the mirror, tears sprang to my eyes. It was perfect. It was me. I stepped out onto the viewing pedestal, my heart thrumming with a nervous electric energy. My mom gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Sarah's eyes were glistening. "Oh, Chloe," my mom whispered. "That's the one." I looked at Maya, my smile so wide it hurt my face, desperate for her validation, the final crucial seal of approval. She was silent for a long moment, her head tilted. Her lips pursed. The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable, puncturing the celebratory atmosphere. "It's nice," she said finally, the word landing with a dull thud. "It's very pretty, but don't you think it's a little plain? The dress I pointed out at the last place, the one with the crystal bodice, that had more wow factor. This is just safe." There was that word again. Safe. Suddenly, my dream dress felt ordinary, my taste pedestrian. The joy that had been fizzing in my chest moments before deflated into a pool of insecurity. My mom shot Maya a sharp look. "I think she looks breathtaking," she said, her voice firm. I ended up buying the dress, my heart overriding the seed of doubt Maya had planted. But as I signed the credit card slip, a part of me felt a strange sense of defiance, as if I were committing an act of rebellion against my best friend. The experience left a bitter aftertaste, a lingering confusion that I could not quite shake. From that day on, the passive-aggressive comments became a steady drip, a subtle water torture I was only subconsciously aware of. When Michael and I announced we had chosen a wonderful local caterer known for their farm-to-table cuisine, Maya's response was a lukewarm, "Oh, that's rustic." "Are you sure your older relatives will be okay with kale salad and quinoa?" When I showed her the save the dates I had spent a weekend hand lettering, she held one up to the light and said, "This is a cute hobby. But are you sure you don't want to use a professional stationer? It just looks a little DIY." Each comment was couched in concern, wrapped in the guise of helpfulness, which made it impossible to confront. If I pushed back, I was being too sensitive. If I expressed hurt, I was misunderstanding her. She was a master of plausible deniability, leaving me to question my own perceptions, to wonder if I was the one who was going crazy. The tension escalated during a meeting with our chosen florist, a woman whose ethereal, romantic arrangements I had admired for years. I had brought my mood board, a collection of images showcasing soft, flowing bouquets with lots of greenery, peonies, and garden roses in shades of blush, cream, and lavender. I was passionately explaining the whimsical, slightly untamed look I was going for when Maya cut me off mid-sentence. She turned to the florist, offering a tight, apologetic smile. "You will have to forgive Chloe," she said with a light laugh that did not reach her eyes. "She is in her full-on fairy tale princess mode. I think what we actually need is something more structured, more sophisticated. Maybe something with orchids or calla lilies? All these pastels are a bit juvenile, don't you think?" I sat there, stunned into silence, a hot, mortifying blush creeping up my neck. I felt like a child who had been publicly scolded. The florist, a consummate professional, looked between the two of us, her expression carefully neutral. "Well," she said diplomatically, "the final decision is always up to the bride." I found my voice, a weak, reedy version of my own. "No, the pastels are what I want," I said, avoiding Maya's gaze. The rest of the meeting was excruciatingly awkward. I felt defensive and foolish, and the joy of planning this beautiful element of my wedding had been completely sucked out of the room. That evening, I tried to talk to Michael about it. I relayed the conversation, my voice trembling with a mixture of anger and hurt. He listened patiently, his brow furrowed with concern. "Honey, that's not okay," he said gently. "She's completely undermining you. It's your wedding, not hers." "I know, but maybe she's right," I heard myself say, the insidious voice of self-doubt she had so skillfully planted now speaking through me. "Maybe my ideas are childish. Maybe I don't have good taste." "Stop," he said, taking my hands in his. "Your taste is beautiful. Your vision for our wedding is beautiful. The problem isn't your vision. The problem is Maya." I wanted to believe him, but a lifetime of trusting Maya's judgment was a hard habit to break. I defended her, making excuses. "She's just stressed. She wants everything to be perfect for me. She's always been my biggest supporter." But even as I said the words, they tasted like lies. My biggest supporter was systematically dismantling my confidence, piece by painful piece. The dream was beginning to feel like a nightmare, and the monster in it was wearing the face of my best friend. My bridal shower was supposed to be the antidote. It was the one event I wasn't planning, a day to simply be celebrated and showered with love. My sister, Sarah, had taken the reins, and I knew she would create something beautiful. It was to be an elegant afternoon tea at the Camellia Room, a charming, light-filled venue with vintage floral teacups and tiered platters of delicate sandwiches and pastries. It was, in short, perfectly me. I imagined a day of laughter, champagne, and a much-needed reset with my friends, especially with Maya. I harbored a naive hope that the pure, uncomplicated joy of the occasion would somehow exorcise the strange tension that had taken root between us. The day was beautiful, a perfect sun-drenched Saturday in early May. The room was filled with the women I loved most in the world. My mom, my aunts, my cousins, my wonderful bridesmaids, and my closest friends. The air buzzed with happy chatter, but from the moment Maya walked in, 20 minutes late, the temperature in the room seemed to drop. She was wearing a severe black dress that stood in stark contrast to the festive pastels everyone else had on. She offered me a curt, air kiss near my cheek, and a mumbled, "Sorry I am late. Traffic was a nightmare." There was no warmth in her eyes, no spark of her usual vivacity. She took a seat at the edge of the table, a solitary, brooding island in our sea of celebration. Throughout the party, she remained aloof. She scrolled through her phone while my aunt told a funny story about my childhood. She offered monosyllabic answers to anyone who tried to engage her. I watched her from across the room, a familiar ache of confusion and hurt blooming in my chest. This wasn't my Maya. This was a stranger, a ghost at the feast. My sister, ever perceptive, caught my eye and gave me a small, worried frown. I tried to signal back that it was fine, but we both knew it wasn't tea. Then came the time for opening gifts. It was a beautiful, slightly embarrassing parade of affection. Gorgeous lingerie, kitchen gadgets for my new life with Michael, a framed photo from my college graduation. With each gift, I offered effusive thanks, my heart full. Finally, Sarah handed me a small, exquisitely wrapped box in Tiffany blue paper with a perfectly tied white satin ribbon. "This one's from Maya," Sarah said, her voice carefully neutral. A wave of relief washed over me. Maybe this was her olive branch. The gift was so beautifully presented. A classic, thoughtful choice. "Oh, Maya, it is gorgeous," I said, my smile genuine for the first time since she'd arrived. I carefully untied the ribbon and lifted the lid. Nestled on a bed of white cotton was a delicate, heart-shaped silver locket. It was simple, timeless, and utterly lovely. I was genuinely touched. "Maya, it is perfect," I breathed, looking up at her. "Thank you." Her expression was unreadable, her lips set in a thin, straight line. "Open it," she said. Her voice was flat, devoid of emotion. My fingers, fumbling slightly, found the tiny clasp. I pressed it and the locket sprang open. I expected to see a space for a photo, or perhaps a tiny, engraved message. Instead, my brain struggled to process what I was seeing. Lying on the polished silver, one on each side of the heart, were two tiny, perfectly preserved dead houseflies. They were curled and stiff, their iridescent wings dull under the soft lights of the tea room. A wave of nausea rolled through me. It was so bizarre, so grotesque, so utterly incomprehensible. A few of my friends who were close enough to see gasped. A shocked silence fell over our table, radiating outwards until the entire room was quiet. The only sound was the faint clinking of a teaspoon against a saucer from a distant table. What is this?" I whispered, my voice a raw, broken thing. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the tiny corpses in the locket. Maya finally smiled. It was a cold, cruel smirk that didn't reach her eyes. "It's a joke, silly," she said, her voice loud in the suffocating silence. "A little inside joke. You know, to remind you to fly away from your old single life." Get it? No one laughed. The air was thick with horror and disbelief. The cruelty was so breathtaking, so audacious, it felt like a physical assault. This wasn't a misguided joke. This was a message, delivered with surgical precision in front of my entire circle of loved ones. It was an act of pure, unadulterated sabotage. My sister Sarah was the first to move. She stood up, her face a pale, furious mask. She gently took the locket from my trembling hands and snapped it shut. She looked directly at Maya, her voice low and shaking with rage. "I think you should leave. Now." The mask of feigned innocence on Maya's face finally shattered, and what lay beneath was terrifying. Her features twisted into a sneer of pure, venomous rage. "Oh, I am sorry," she spat, her voice rising to a shrill crescendo. "Did I ruin the perfect little princess's perfect little party? God, Chloe, you are so predictable. You just can't stand it when the spotlight isn't on you for 1 second, can you?" The room erupted in scandalized murmurs. My mother started to stand up, but my father put a restraining hand on her arm. "Maya, please, just go," I begged, the tears that had been welling in my eyes finally spilling over, hot and shameful, down my cheeks. But she was just getting started. It was as if a dam of resentment I never knew existed had burst. She was on her feet now, her hands planted on the table, leaning forward like a predator. "You think you're so much better than me, don't you?" she hissed, her eyes scanning the shocked faces around the room. "You always have. With your perfect family, and your perfect grades, and now your perfect fiancé, and your ridiculously perfect cliché wedding. You lap it all up, don't you? Like you deserve it more than anyone else." She turned her venomous gaze back to me. "I have been there for you through everything. Every stupid drama, every pathetic heartbreak. And what happens the second you get a ring on your finger? You disappear. You forget all about the people who were there for you before perfect Michael came along. This whole wedding isn't a celebration of love. It's the Chloe show and we all just supporting cast members. Well, I'm done. I am done pretending to be happy for you. I'm not happy for you. I'm sick of you." Each word was a hammer blow, shattering the carefully constructed image I had of our 2-decade friendship. She wasn't just angry. She was consumed by a jealousy so profound and so ugly it had twisted her into someone I no longer recognized. She was dredging up a twisted funhouse mirror version of our history, recasting my happiness as a personal slight against her. It was my sister who finally ended it. She walked around the table, stood directly in front of Maya, and said in a voice that was terrifyingly calm, "Get out. Before I have you removed." Maya stared at her for a moment, her chest heaving. Then, with the final contemptuous glare at me, she grabbed her purse and stormed out of the tea room, leaving a wake of devastation and stunned silence behind her. I sat there, motionless, the tears streaming down my face, the beautiful party in ruins around me. The silver locket with its hideous secret sat closed on the table, a tiny, perfect symbol of the beautiful thing our friendship had once been, and the grotesque, dead thing it had become. The breaking point hadn't just been reached, it had been obliterated. And in its place was the cold, hard, undeniable truth of Maya's betrayal. The aftermath of the bridal shower was a quiet, hollowed-out space. The ride home was silent, my mom and sister flanking me, their presence a comforting but ultimately permeable shield against the torrent of my own thoughts. I didn't cry anymore. I felt numb, as if I had been in a car crash and the shock was holding the full extent of the pain at bay. That night, I sat on the sofa with Michael, wrapped in a blanket, and recounted the entire horrifying scene. As I spoke, the numbness gave way to a deep, shuddering grief. I wasn't just mourning the end of a friendship. I was mourning the version of the past I had always believed in. I was grieving the loss of the girl I thought was my sister, the one who had held my hand through every trial and triumph. Michael just held me, letting me sob until I was exhausted. His steady presence a lighthouse in the storm. "You know what you have to do, right?" he said gently, long after my tears had subsided. I knew. There was no other choice. The thought of her standing beside me at the altar, a smiling imposter in a bridesmaid dress, was unbearable. She had declared war on my happiness, and I could not, would not, allow her on the battlefield of my wedding day. Making the decision was one thing. Executing it was another. It felt like an amputation. I composed and deleted a dozen different text messages, each one feeling either too harsh or too weak. Finally, with Michael's hand on my shoulder, I wrote the final version. Maya, after what happened at the shower, I don't think you can be a part of my wedding. I am heartbroken it has come to this, but I need to protect myself and this day. I wish you well. I hit send before I could lose my nerve. The response was almost instantaneous, and it was everything I had expected. A barrage of texts, each one more vitriolic than the last. I was a backstabbing, ungrateful, selfish bitch. I was a traitor. I was throwing away 20 years of friendship over a stupid joke. I was dead to her. Then came a long, rambling email, a manifesto of her perceived victimhood, detailing every imagined slight I had ever committed against her, dating back to high school. I read the first few lines and then deleted it. I blocked her number. It was an act of emotional self-preservation. I couldn't let her poison seep any further into my life. The next call I made was to my sister. Her voice was thick with sleep when she answered. "Sarah," I said, my own voice hoarse. "Will you be my maid of honor?" There was no hesitation. "Of course, Chloe. I thought you would never ask." In the final 2 weeks leading up to the wedding, my bridesmaids formed a protective circle around me. They screened my calls, took over the final communications with vendors, and filled my days with welcome distractions. They turned what could have been a period of intense anxiety and sadness into a testament to the power of true, supportive friendship. Sarah, in particular, was my hero. She stepped into the role seamlessly, her calm competence a soothing balm on my frayed nerves. The wedding day dawned bright and clear, a perfect October morning. As I sat in the makeup chair, surrounded by my sister and my wonderful friends, a strange sense of peace settled over me. Maya's absence was a tangible presence, a ghost in the room. But it was no longer a source of acute pain. It was simply a fact, a sad footnote in a story that was now, finally, moving forward. Walking down the aisle on my father's arm, seeing Michael's face lit with a love so pure and profound it took my breath away. I felt a wave of gratitude so intense it almost brought me to my knees. The conservatory was a fairy tale, even more beautiful than I had imagined, filled with the soft, romantic flowers I had chosen, filled with the faces of people who genuinely loved and supported us. But the ghost of Maya lingered. As my sister gave her maid of honor speech, a beautiful, funny, and heartfelt tribute to our relationship, I felt a sharp pang of what could have been. I imagined Maya up there, the speech we had always joked she would give, full of embarrassing anecdotes and sincere love. The loss of that shared history, that imagined future, was a grief that would take a long time to heal. During the reception, as I scanned the crowd of laughing, dancing guests, my eyes instinctively searched for her, a habit ingrained over 2 decades. Her absence was a small, empty space in the joyful tapestry of the day. She didn't ruin my wedding. She didn't have that power. My love for Michael and the love that surrounded us was far too strong for that. But she tainted it. She wove a thread of sorrow into what should have been a day of unblemished joy, a permanent stain on a precious memory. We never spoke again. I heard through the grapevine of mutual acquaintances that she had crafted a compelling narrative for herself. In her version, I was the villain, a demanding, selfish bridezilla who had cast her aside for no reason. Some people believed her. Some friendships faded, caught in the awkward crossfire. It was another layer of loss, another consequence of her destructive envy. In the months that followed the wedding, as the thank you cards were sent and the beautiful photos were framed, the raw, gaping wound of my broken friendship with Maya slowly began to scar over. The honeymoon was a much-needed escape, a sun-drenched bubble where it was just me and Michael, and the future felt shiny and new. But back in the quiet reality of everyday life, I found myself undertaking a painful but necessary emotional archaeology, excavating the ruins of our friendship and examining the artifacts of our shared past under a harsh new light. I realized, with a dawning, sickening clarity, that the red flags had been there for years. I just hadn't wanted to see them. I remembered how in college, when I'd been awarded a prestigious internship she had also applied for, her congratulations had been tinged with a bitterness I'd mistaken for her own disappointment. "That's amazing for you," she said. "I guess they just prefer your style of work." I remembered the backhanded compliments that had been a staple of our conversations for as long as I could remember. "That dress is so flattering. It barely shows your problem areas." Or, "You're so lucky you don't care what other people think of you." Each memory was a small piece of the puzzle, and when I finally put them all together, the picture was undeniable. Maya's jealousy wasn't a new phenomenon sparked by my wedding. It had always been there, a silent, corrosive acid, eating away at the foundations of our friendship. My engagement, my unapologetic happiness, was simply the event that had caused the entire rotten structure to collapse. I had been her best friend, yes, but I had also been her benchmark, the person against whom she constantly measured her own life. And when my life took a significant leap forward, she couldn't celebrate. She could only feel left behind. This experience, forged in the crucible of betrayal, taught me more than I ever wanted to know about the insidious nature of envy in friendships. True support isn't just being there for the bad times. It says being there, genuinely and enthusiastically, for the good times. It is the ability to clap for your friends' victories without feeling like it diminishes your own. It's understanding that someone else's light shining brightly doesn't make yours any dimmer. Maya was a phenomenal friend when I was heartbroken or struggling. She thrived in the role of savior and confidant. But she was incapable of being a true friend when I was soaring. To anyone watching this, to anyone who feels a persistent knot of anxiety in a friendship they can quite explain, my advice is this. Trust that feeling. It is your intuition waving a giant red flag. If a friend consistently downplays your achievements, if their compliments feel like cleverly disguised insults, if you find yourself deliberately shrinking your joy around them to make them feel more comfortable, you are not in a healthy friendship. You are in a toxic dynamic that will eventually poison your own sense of self-worth. Setting boundaries is not an act of cruelty. It is the ultimate act of self-preservation. You cannot fix someone else's insecurity. You cannot love them hard enough to make them love themselves. You can only protect your own peace. Sometimes, that means having difficult conversations. And sometimes, in the most painful of cases, it means walking away. It means accepting that letting go is not failure, but a courageous step towards a healthier and happier life. The ultimate message, the deeper truth I've unearthed from this wreckage, is that major life events, weddings, babies, career successes are pressure cookers. They intensify everything, for better or for worse. They will show you the unwavering strength and support of your true allies, the people who will stand in the fire with you and for you. And they will expose the cracks, the resentments, and the hidden jealousies in the relationships you thought were solid as rock. Losing my childhood best friend was one of the most painful experiences of my life. I still feel a phantom ache where she used to be. But in her place, there is now space that has been filled with the authentic, unconditional love of my husband, my sister, and the friends who celebrated my happiness as if it were their own. The wedding, in the end, was not just the beginning of my marriage. It was a profound, painful, and ultimately liberating rite of passage. It revealed the truth, stripped away the deception, and set me on a path toward a future built on relationships that are not just endurable, but genuinely joyful. And that is a dream more beautiful than any I could have imagined as a 12-year-old girl, flipping through the pages of a bridal magazine. Chloe S.'s story is a powerful and heartbreaking reminder that sometimes the deepest betrayals come from the people we least expect. It is a testament to the quiet strength it takes to protect your own happiness, even when it means letting go of a friendship you cherished. And that is a conversation I want to continue with all of you. Down in the comments, I'd really love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever been in a situation where a friend wasn't happy for your success? Or have you ever had to recognize the red flags in a toxic friendship? How did you handle it? This is a safe space, and sharing your experience could truly help someone else who feels alone in what they were going through. If this story resonated with you, please take a moment to hit that like button. It tells YouTube that these stories matter, and it helps our diary reach more people who might need to hear them. And of course, if you want to uncover more true stories of deception, betrayal, and resilience, make sure you subscribe to Deception Diaries and ring that notification bell. You want to miss the next entry. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, remember to trust your instincts.